Darkness hides in the most ordinary places. A quiet street, a normal house, a family that waves to neighbors. Everything looks safe until someone dares to look inside. This is the story of the House of Horrors, a home that looked perfectly normal on the outside, but concealed secrets so terrifying the entire city would never be the same. People believed it was just another home, but behind its doors, something unspeakable was happening. And when the truth came out, no one could believe it had been there, hiding in plain sight. Tonight, we step inside, the house that looked normal. Every city has that one street where nothing bad ever happens. Children play outside, neighbors greet each other, and everyone feels safe. That's what made this house so chilling. It looked exactly like all the others. The grass was trimmed, the walls freshly painted. To anyone passing by, it was the picture of peace. But inside, the family living there carried a darkness no one could imagine. Neighbors later said they noticed small things. The windows were always closed, even in summer. Strange noises came late at night. But who would suspect? After all, it was just another family. Right? At first, nobody asked questions. The family seemed private, but not unfriendly. The children rarely came outside, and when they did, they looked pale and quiet. People assumed they were shy. But silence can hide screams, and this silence would not last forever. Then one night, a single scream broke the silence, a scream so piercing it sent chills across the block. The neighbors froze, but just as quickly as it began, it stopped. The next morning, the house looked the same as ever, curtains closed, yard quiet, the family car still in the driveway. But something had changed. Cliffhanger for retention. What was really happening inside this house? And how had the family managed to hide it for so long? The answers, when they finally came out, would shock an entire city and haunt everyone who ever lived nearby. It always begins with something small, a detail so ordinary that most people would overlook it. But sometimes, it's those small details that open the door to truth. For this house, the first real suspicion started with a smell. Neighbors described it later as a strange, heavy odor that drifted into their yards. At first they thought it was garbage, or maybe something dead in the crawl space. But the smell came back, again and again, stronger each week. One neighbor grew so unsettled, she called city services to complain. But when officials came to the house, the family answered politely. They explained it away. Old plumbing, they said. A rat problem, maybe. The officials believed them. They left. But the smell lingered. Then came the second clue. The children. One afternoon, a passerby spotted a young girl from the house standing in the front yard. She looked frail, as if she hadn't eaten in days. Her arms were thin, her eyes sunken. But before the passerby could ask if she was okay, the front door opened, and someone pulled the girl inside. The door slammed shut. Rumors began to spread. Why were the children always hidden? Why did the house stay locked up, even in summer? And why did no one ever see the family together in public? At first, these were just whispers among neighbors. But whispers, when repeated enough, become warnings. And then came the night that changed everything. The neighborhood had gone quiet. Midnight approached. But suddenly, lights flashed inside the house. A figure rushed past the window. And then, another scream, louder than the first. This time, people knew it wasn't their imagination. One neighbor dialed the police. For the first time, authorities were on their way to the House of Horrors. But when officers knocked, the family's story seemed normal. They insisted nothing was wrong. The father smiled politely. Mother stood behind him, silent, eyes lowered. The children were nowhere to be seen. The officers left, again, and the house went quiet once more. But secrets cannot stay hidden forever. What no one knew was that inside this house, the truth was growing too big to contain, and soon, it would come bursting out. When the police left that night, many believed the story was over, but behind the walls of that house, it was only just beginning. Inside, the children lived in silence. They were told never to speak to outsiders. Their world was a locked door, drawn curtains, and constant fear. The father controlled everything. He kept the blinds closed, the doors bolted, and the children hidden from the world. They had little to eat, little to drink, and almost no contact with anyone outside their family. Some of the children dreamed of escape. They whispered to each other late at night, imagining what lay beyond the walls. But each time, the sound of footsteps in the hallway reminded them, escape was not allowed. What no one knew at the time was that the children were keeping notes. Small scraps of paper, hidden in cracks and under floorboards, recording the days they went without food, the punishments they endured, and the desperate prayers they made for freedom. The house, once seen as ordinary, was in fact a prison. And inside that prison, hope was fading. But sometimes, it takes only one moment of courage to change everything. The breakthrough, it happened on a cold winter night. The neighborhood was quiet, blanketed by frost. Inside the house, the children huddled in their rooms. And then, one of them, too scared to wait any longer, made a decision. A girl slipped out of bed, clutching a hidden cell phone she had stolen when no one was watching. Her hands trembled as she dialed 3 numbers, 911. Her voice was shaking, but the words were clear. "Help us, please. We're not safe." For the first time, the outside world was hearing the truth. The dispatcher kept her talking, asking questions. Where was she? What was happening? The girl whispered as quickly as she could, terrified of being caught. And then, footsteps. The line went dead. Silence filled the room. But it was enough. Police now had a reason to return. This time, they weren't coming for a welfare check. They were coming for a rescue. No one in the neighborhood knew it yet, but the moment the police crossed that doorstep, they were about to uncover horrors that would shock the entire city and the world. The call had changed everything. Dispatchers relayed the message. A child inside that house had begged for help. This time, officers couldn't ignore it. A convoy of patrol cars arrived under the cover of night. Their flashing lights bounced across the quiet street, waking neighbors who peeked through curtains, whispering, "What's happening?" The officers approached cautiously. The front yard was still, the curtains drawn. Everything looked normal, too normal. But the air was heavy, tense, like the entire house was holding its breath. They knocked once. Silence. They knocked again. Still nothing. Finally, a man appeared. Calm, polite, smiling as if nothing was wrong. He insisted the children were fine. He said they were sleeping. But the officers noticed his hands trembled slightly as he spoke. This time, they didn't leave. They pushed past him. And for the first time, the secrets of the house began to surface. The smell hit them first. Thick, rotten. It clung to the air, coating every breath. One officer described it later as a smell you never forget. Then came the silence, broken only by the creak of their boots on the floorboards. The deeper they moved inside, the darker it became. Curtains sealed out all light. Every room was heavy with shadows. And then, they heard it. A faint sound. Not from the parents, not from the officers, but from deeper inside. A whisper. A cry. The officers followed the noise, their flashlights trembling across the walls. And at the end of the hallway, they found a locked door. They forced it open. Inside, children huddled together in the shadows. Pale, thin, eyes wide with fear. They blinked against the sudden light, unsure if this was another trick or if rescue had truly arrived. The officers froze. For a moment, even hardened veterans couldn't believe what they were seeing. One officer whispered into his radio, "We've got them. We've got the kids." But this was only the beginning, because in that moment, as the children were let out, more questions began to rise. How long had this been happening? What else was hidden in the house? And how had no one noticed before? The raid had pulled back the first curtain, but what lay beyond would haunt the entire city. The truth was finally breaking free, but the darkest discoveries were still waiting in the shadows of that house.